Welcome to Digital Marketing for Contractors, a podcast for home improvement contractors to help you crush your lead goals and take your business to the next level. Join us each episode as we give you powerful insights and practical tips on the best digital marketing strategies to help you grow your home improvement business. Let's get started.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Digital Marketing for Contractors. This podcast is hosted by FatCat Strategies. We are a full-service digital marketing agency located in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we work with home improvement contractors just like you to drive leads, sales, and growth through digital marketing. My name is Janet. I am the founder of FatCat Strategies. My co-host is...
Hey, I'm Caitlin. I'm head of client services at FatCat Strategies.
And we are stoked because we have Cory with us today. Cory is the owner of Unrushed Honest Quality in Indianapolis, Indiana, and he is a James Hardie roofing siding contractor and roofing contractor. And Cory, why don't you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your business, and tell us about JHC in a Box.
Yeah, so my name's Cory Getz. I'm a contractor out of Central Indiana. We do a lot of siding, windows, roofing, and gutters. Put a lot of Hardie board up, and I have a consulting company where I work with other contractors to help them grow their Hardie businesses. And so, yeah, glad to be here today. Glad to talk to you a little bit about digital marketing.
Yeah, well, actually, we're going to twist it around a little bit. We're going to talk about digital marketing, but I want to hear about you, like the world from the perspective of the owner operator. So, we obviously are partnering with companies like you to manage your digital marketing, but we know that what we do is always in support of your business goals.
Right.
And we're only successful if you're able to meet those business goals. And so I think it would be really interesting for our listeners to kind of hear like the backstory about UHQ, like a brief history of the company. How did you get started? Why did you decide to go out on your own? So if you could kind of give us like the thumbnail sketch of UHQ.
Yeah. So, I guess it all starts. I grew up on a livestock farm in northern Indiana, and we did everything ourselves there, including our own construction work. And so I put on my first roof when I was 13. And when I was 15, I started working for my buddy's dad, who was a contractor. He did a lot of siding. And so I worked for him for many years. I went down to Katrina. When Katrina went on, went to Indy for a large hailstorm. I think it was 2006. Kind of travel around and done different things over the years, and ended up going to college at night. And during the last couple of years of college, I worked for the largest residential roofing contractor in the U.S. at the time. And I was kind of over being overworking for contractors, and I was actually getting ready to go work for Amazon, and a large hailstorm hit my neighborhood, and all my neighbors were like, "Cory, we know you, we trust you, we want you to do our roofs." And at that point, I was pretty much done at the company I was at. And so I decided that I would take on this endeavor of helping my neighbors. And and so it all started with that. And so when I started UHQ, I was like, well, what am I going to name it? I was like, I want to be a different kind of contractor than many contractors I've worked for over the years. I didn't want to do any high pressure sales. Yeah. I wanted to take my time when I was doing the work. I wanted to be honest, which there's a lot of dishonesty in the market, in the industry. And I wanted to deliver quality work. And so that's where UHQ stands for, is Unrushed Honest Quality. We'll take our time, be honest, give our customers a quality job. And so that was back in 2015. So we're coming up on 10 years in business now, and it's been good.
It's almost like the contractor life chose you.
Right.
I know. Yeah.
You didn't choose your contractor life. It chose you.
That's right. I tried to get out. I tried to go to college, got my business degree, and I just couldn't get away. And, good thing there's a bigger plan out there than what I have, because otherwise I'd probably be in trouble.
So you're 10 years in. If you could go back in time to that first year So hailstorm, your neighbors are asking for help. You put UHQ together.
Yeah.
The version of Cory now, talking to Cory 10 years ago, what are some of the things that you would tell that version of Cory from a business perspective of what it's like to own and operate a contracting business?
Yeah.
It's kind of a loaded question, but.
No, I think that's a really good one. I think, and I hear this from like a lot of other contractors. When I was at that point, I just wanted to become a huge company. I wanted to have, a ton of revenue. I wanted to do, tens of millions of dollars in revenue, and I wanted to grow, and I wanted to take over my market. And I had a lot of ambition then. I still do have ambition for sure, but I had people give me the advice that I'd give myself now, which was, Cory, stay as small as you can, as long as you can.
Really?
Not that you don't want to do more revenue, but I had a lot of ambition to like get big quick. And I wish I would have taken a little more time to research some of the things that I've done over the years that didn't work, and just take a little more time to want to get big. It's like,
Were these other contractors telling you to stay as small as you can for as long as you can, or different from different?
It wasn't as much the contractors as like suppliers and manufacturers that were like, hey, I know you're in a hurry. You want to keep hiring all these sales guys and you want to do all these things, but it's like, it sounds easier than what it is, which is very true. And the more you kind of take your time mastering each part of it, the easier it gets to do, but it all takes time at the end of the day.
So go ahead.
Oh, I mean, you were going to.
Those first 5 years, what were some of the mistakes we all learn from mistakes. It's how I've learned everything. I do it wrong first, and then I do it wrong again, and then I do it wrong again, and then I might start paying attention.
Yeah. When it costs you enough pain and money and all the good things.
Those first 5 years, what were some of the biggies looking back?
I mean, as a contractor, the biggest thing was not putting enough time into the systems and the processes, making sure that everything was on paper and there was good training for the staff. I think that was one of the big ones, just putting together a well thought out plan versus, I think this is going to work. I think this is what my competitor's doing. I'm going to just do that. And, so that's, always a challenge trying to, like I said, trying to grow too fast without the right systems and processes, taking my time to get to know things a little bit better, and just, gaining experience. I'd worked for contractors for many years when I went into business for myself. But it's not the same as once you are the business owner. It's a little different. So,
totally different perspective.
Yeah, I wish I probably would have, one other thing is I wish I would have, I think marketing, it took me many years to get more into marketing. I'm a big Tony Robbins guy, and one of the things he says is like, if you want to grow your business, get good at marketing. And that was always a big challenge early on for me, was I just wanted somebody else to do it for me. And I told myself this story that was like, oh, you don't know what you're doing, Cory. And instead of saying like, how am I going to learn? Right. I wish I would have put a lot more effort into learning that type of thing early. Building relationships. I think that's another big one is, I wish I would have built more relationships along the way.
Like suppliers or vendors or yourself, or anybody.
I mean, just everybody. I think sometimes in business, at the end of the day, you've got to make money. And so you kind of lose track sometimes of like all the relationships that can pay off for you. It could be suppliers, I think customers, I think that's one of the biggest ones is like building those those relationships with the customers. I used to be really like, well, I'm doing a good job for them. And, you can do a good job for a customer and them not necessarily feel that way. And so it has to do with building those relationships with the customers and realizing they are, going to end up being typically one of my best lead sources out there. And I wish I would have nurtured some of which we did great work. We stood behind our work always, but I wish we would have put a little more time into building the relationships with the customers, especially suppliers is good. I've always done a pretty good job. I think at the supply houses, I did a podcast with one of the guys and he's like, Cory knows everybody's name in our supply house, which is true for most of them. Manufacturers are good, but yeah, and I think the other place you can spend as much time getting to know your employees too.
Yeah.
And that's another big one. I've always done pretty good there, but I think there's always room for improvement.
So JHC in a box, that's relatively new. So you've been doing UHQ for 10 years.
Yeah.
That seems like that should keep you busy enough running a successful business.
Yeah. To
branch out.
Steve said that to me the other day. He's like, Cory, why are you even doing this? Like you have UHQ, you have a successful construction company. Why is it you want to go start JHC, which is basically to help other contractors build lucrative businesses?
Yep.
And, I enjoy helping other people, get better. And that's what it's all about, is helping contractors save themselves years of headaches, time, money. There's tons of statistics out there that will say, a new contractor, 80 to 90% will fail in their first 2 to 5 years. So, I just want to help some of these guys who seem like good people, maybe grow their business a little bit faster or grow it in a way that, helps them not fail ultimately. So it's just all about wanting to help other people get better. Just try to share some of the knowledge that I've learned over the years.
And the JHC, James Hardie Contractor in a box, right?
Not technically. No, I mean it would make sense. I mean, so when I started UHQ has a JHC kind of in a box, and so that's where it came from. Was the logo came out of my construction companies, but that's what our customers used to say to us all the time. They're like, "Are you J? Is that J?" They would miss the UHQ. They would read it as JHC, and they'd be like, "Does that stand for James Hardie Contractor?"
I thought it was James Hardie Contractor this whole time.
No, I mean, you would think it is, but it's
to
just
play on your UHQ logo.
Yeah, to play off of UHQ. So basically, it came out of my.
We're done.
And that's what it is. It's the systems and processes that then allow us to price, sell, and install Hardie board well.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Just this whole time we've been walking around going, it's James Hardie Contractor.
Yeah. I mean, the colors, everything. No.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. And
good. I guess that's good. I guess that it gives us the image off that we're looking for. But yeah, technically it doesn't stand for anything, especially according to my attorney, who was like, you can't name it. So
yeah, you can't name
it.
So
it's that from the record.
It's people looking at the
logo. No, it's all good. It's all good.
Instead of UHQ.
So if you need home improvement contractor advice in terms of sales processes, etc., go to Cory, no matter what you sell. And I think it was pretty cool. Cory had us on his podcast, JHC in a Box, talking about marketing. We have worked with Cory for 5 years now, which is amazing.
Yes.
Time
flies.
Time flies. To tell a little bit of that story, just so y'all listeners all know, it was, I think, the beginning of 2020. About
right before COVID, but we didn't know COVID was coming. I think it was January 2020.
Yeah, January 2020. We flew out to Indy for a James Hardie
educational.
Yeah, it was an educational
presentation.
Right. Maybe 10, 15 companies in the area. And Janet presented. We went to dinner with Cory. And I think we just decided that things were there was
and
a good
match was made.
And there was good chemistry there. Cory told that story to us and we were passionate about it. And Cory, I know you've worked with other agencies before too. I mean, so.
Yeah. So on that note, yes, we've been helping you for 5 years, but you've been in business for 10 years on the marketing and sales front.
Right.
If you go back to some of those early days, what were you doing those first 1 to 2 years to generate leads, and how did you track them? And, were you running all the sales appointments? Did you have another sales rep? What were the early days looking like?
So early days is I had, we focused a little more on roofing early on, and we had a couple salespeople that were door to door. And so they initially were selling a lot of the insurance. And then I was the one selling the retail. I was the one who kind of pushed us into the Hardie side of things. A lot of our marketing early on was word of mouth.
Right.
Like I said, we did $600,000-$700,000 in revenue in the first 6 months just from my neighbors and the people that we would solicit. So a lot of that, we put up a billboard in the neighborhood that I lived in.
Okay.
A billboard in a neighborhood?
Yeah. It was it was a very city area, and there was this nice billboard that was really inexpensive. And so I put my logo up there. And I remember all these companies, when you start up in business, are like, hey, you need a website. And so it was oh, I really don't want to, have a bad website. And so I was so timid to even get a website early on.
Classic.
And it took me 6 months to a year. And I promised that I would not let it be bad. And it was awful. It was terrible.
In what way was it awful?
Well,
did you know it was awful?
Awful could mean a lot of things.
It was very cookie cutter, and it was not well put together, and it goes back to I wasn't always great at marketing back then, and so it was going off of some of what I had to contribute to it. And so then it was what I was contributing maybe wasn't top tier, but they were just more there to give me this cookie cutter website. It wasn't really SEO loaded in any way. So it was just the story I had typed up with no.
So you had to provide all the content.
Yeah, exactly. And then I remember that first website, and they owned the domain.
Classic.
We've talked about
the website. And so then by the time it was oh yeah, we're not doing business anymore, then it was oh, you own all of this? Oh, this is terrible for me. And then I had to start all over.
So you couldn't buy the domain from them, or you had to go find another domain?
That one, I think I had to go get another domain. I ended up getting it back a year or two later once they kind of let it expire.
Right.
But they initially, that was their poll to try to well, when you want to come back, then we'll own your domain.
I hate that about this industry. I mean, we are in this industry, and I've always hated that. It's a play to hold your customers hostage at gunpoint. I think it's nonsense.
And you didn't know.
You don't you don't know to ask those questions.
Yeah, you definitely didn't know up front. I had no idea when we went into it, what I was getting into. They make it sound so good, we'll buy the domain for you, and
we'll make it
put it all together. We'll make it so easy for you.
Yeah.
And then it's oh wait, we're breaking up, and it's make sure make sure you have a prenup when you get into these agreements, so what's happening when you leave them, because you just don't know what you don't know early on.
Right.
And so
I always try to relate it to something that I know absolutely nothing about. So you mentioned growing up on a farm. I don't know anything about tractors. If I had to go buy a tractor, I would be subject to whatever the salesperson told me. And so I think contractors, when they go to a marketing company, they don't know to even ask the question, who's going to own the domain? They might not really even understand the difference between a domain name and their website. So, I mean, I don't know what to do to fix that, but
we try to educate them.
One of the reasons we're doing this podcast is to educate people. And we've got a bunch of episodes about, hey, contractors, you should own all of your stuff. Don't let your agency own it.
Yep.
All right. So those
and that was like a national company too. It's like this huge company, and you're 100% right. Like that was their play. Like later come out, oh well, they knew they were getting a new guy. He didn't know what he was doing, and it was their way of like, yeah, this is how we. Yeah, you're gonna come, and they would tell you after you break up with them, they're like, oh, you'll be coming back. Yeah, they do it real friendly.
I just wonder what are they going to do with all these domain names that are associated with businesses they don't own? Anyway, that's a story for another day.
we obviously try to educate on. I know I want to look at Janet when I talk, but she's like talking to your mic.
Talking to the mic.
I'll look at you. We always are trying to educate on, owning your stuff. If just own it. No matter what agency you work with, own it.
Have logins,
of course. What about on back to the beginning? And this is something we always are trying to encourage. And when we choose other clients to work with is, are you on a CRM? Do you use a CRM? What were you using? You don't have to drop names, but how quickly did you realize the importance?
Were you in a spiral net-bound notebook that first $600,000, or did
I
you
was
know?
Not. I came from like I said, I'd worked for the largest roofing contractor in the U.S. at the time. I saw a lot of value in a CRM system, and I went with AccuLinks because I still have AccuLinks. Yep. I don't mind plugging them. I think they're really good. I mean, there's pros and cons. There's obviously other ones like a Job Nimbus or the Service Titan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's like they're all as good as I think you put into it, because you have to kind of build them out. And so early on, I was so fortunate to make that decision pretty early on, where it was like, hey, I'm going to get something that's going to track it. But it only tracks it as well as you set it up to track it as well. Right. So, I mean, there's definitely some room for improvement over time, where it was like, okay, we have a CRM, we're tracking it. But then I think over time you kind of learn, and you're like, oh, either I'm not really tracking this analytic, or I'm not being specific enough. I think with lead gen, it's it's like, okay, where did the lead come from? Well, and I know you guys can speak about this better than I can, but it's like, well, it could come from Google. Well, where is it coming from in Google? Is it Google local service ads? Is it a Google ad? Is it your organic Google?
Your business profile.
Your Google business
profile, right? So that was another place that I lucked out early, though, is I created my own Google business profile, which is another area I've heard so many contractors have somebody else set that up for them, and then they don't own their Google business profile. I luckily did. That was one thing I got lucky on, I guess. But there were multiple companies that were like, we'll set it up for you. I mean, over the years,
I don't even think Google will let other people set up Google business profiles anymore.
Back in the day.
But these days, what we're hearing from clients is that Google has changed, where you have to take a video of the door business to your office, and then you have to turn around and get a street sign, and you have to stand on one foot, and you have to say the Pledge of Allegiance, and then you have to promise your firstborn, and they might authenticate your Google business profile.
But the fact that you had yours from the get-go and owned it, you were able to start building those reviews, and you didn't have to worry about losing those and transferring them. So that was a huge win.
Yeah. If we could plug the education front for a second, what we've seen, and again, I think Google has made some changes where it's more difficult to let other people, quote unquote, own your business profile. But one thing that we've seen is, Cory, say you've got a part-time office manager. We'll invent a name. Let's call her Stacy. And you're like, hey, Stacy, sign me up for this thing. And she does it with her Gmail address. Well, then she decides to move to Costa Rica.
Oh, yeah.
And now Stacy's gone, and so is the login to your Google business profile. We see stuff like that all the time, where owners will delegate a task to their cousin, to their brother's wife,
to their marketing agency.
To their marketing agency, but it's not just to the marketing agency. They'll delegate it to somebody else. And then years go by and they can't even get a login anymore because the relationship with that person they delegated the task to, that person has exited stage left. I don't know if you had anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, over the years, I don't remember a specific one, but I do recall instances where it's like, okay, you have somebody set something up in your business for you, and you do, like you said, you think you're delegating, and then it's like, oh, I need access to that. How do we get in that? And then it's like, oh, well, hit forget password, and then it's like it starts sending it to somebody else, and you're like, how do we get there?
Exactly.
So I love the story of this journey, and like we're throwing in bits of education as we go through it. And we talked about some initial marketing mistakes. You know, you built a website because somebody told you to build a website. You had to go probably rebuild it.
Start from scratch.
Many times. I can't even I was trying to think about that earlier. I was like, how many websites have we had now? And it's quite a few, at least 4 or 5.
Yeah. When did you decide, I guess, that, you know, beyond word of mouth, you had to up your lead generation game? And how did you start learning? I loaded question, but how did you start learning about other ways to generate leads? And when did you know it was time?
Yeah. You know, I think we were always wanting more leads. I think that's like every contractor is like, I just need more leads, right? And you know, you would, you get linked up with the manufacturers. You know, we're linked up with like Owens Corning, and it was like, hey, hook us up with some leads. And then, oh, we don't really have many leads, or we give those to our platinum contractors. And you know, Hardie would give us some leads, but they would be very clear, like, you got to figure it out. And so you kind of get to this point where it's like, well, if I want to grow my business, I need more leads. And so it definitely got to a point where it was like, it's just, I think it was always a constant where it's like, I always knew I wanted more leads, and I always had this huge ambition of like growing the business, but it's like, how do you do it is like a whole nother story, especially when you're getting started. Because you know, people will be like, oh, we'll run some pay-per-click ads. And it's like, oh, okay. And you try that, and then it doesn't really work. Or you hire these companies that promise, like, I'm going to, you know, for $500 a month or $3,000, I'm going to get you X amount of leads. And then they don't really deliver, or they deliver a bunch of leads and none of them will set an appointment. So it was always like, how do we get more leads? But it's like, how to do it has always been, I think that's one of the toughest challenges.
And the landscape changes all the time. Did you do the third-party lead aggregation?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've done the home advisors, Angie's thing. And, you know, it was good. Or, you know, that was one way, like when we were younger as a company, to bump up some leads real quick. Now there's always the challenge
to practice your sales pitch.
Well, great way to practice the sales pitch. You know, you'll get more competitive real quick because, you know, it's not like a referral. You know, they're going to 3 to 5 contractors, and then you got to figure out how to win, which is good. I mean, it's a good thing to do, but it can get expensive and it can be a real challenge.
So for our listeners who don't know, we were a guest on Cory's podcast, and I'm going to refer back to something we talked about then on that other episode. Cory, you do something that I think is so, it's kind of simple and wholesome and inventive. Tell us a story about, I think you told me you were in like somebody's kitchen and there's like a school calendar on the refrigerator, and you asked to sponsor it. Like, tell us a little bit about what you're doing in your local community with schools, with sports teams, with kids organizations.
Non-digital.
That's helping generate. It's hard to trace those leads, but we definitely think it's part of the formula.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you kind of start to learn that, you know, sponsoring the local, you know, baseball team, you know, it's like if, you know, like like Hardie describes their target customer as Christine, and Christine is, 35 to 55. She's got 2 kids. And so you start to realize, one of the most common demographics that you help as a contractor are families.
Right.
So it's like, one time we were at somebody's house, it's like, well, hey, do your kids, they play softball or they play baseball or whatever it is. And then it gives you that opportunity to say, hey, could I sponsor their team? And most of the time they're like really excited about it. And then they'll start to pass you around the team once you've sponsored the team. They always appreciate that. It's definitely always school calendars you can sponsor, different sporting events. It's just a good way to like really target the communities that you want to be in. We're really focused on like the neighborhoods. Well, if you want to be in a good neighborhood, you're ideally got to be a good school system. And so it's always definitely a good way to get involved with the local community and show support. And, they always appreciate it. So.
And that typically is like a very affordable play, isn't it? Like to add to your marketing mix.
Yeah, like $500 for a season. And, they vary, I do stay away from the travel teams. Because I don't think there's as much value in those. I try to stick to like a local, team. And you can even just go to some of the I don't want to call them arenas, but like the fields. They have these different like field areas. And you can just sponsor that field area, and they'll put up one of your banners as well. It's another good way to do it.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. Kind of glancing through the questions here. Go ahead.
I mean, another thing, educating like leads, all the different ways to generate leads, keep your website up, keep your Google business profile up and running. Something that I think we work with our clients on and, try to educate as well is calculating those number of leads you need and setting goals. Can we as your agency be responsible for generating 20 leads a month with this ad budget? How are you coming up with those numbers, Cory? I mean, like,
how do you set your KPIs?
Yeah.
I mean, I worked with Breakthrough Academy at one point to kind of set ideally what we would like. It's a very challenging thing. You help us do that at FatCat. That's very helpful. You guys have a whole spreadsheet.
We love a spreadsheet.
It's just one of those things where like, if you're gonna do it, you got to kind of work backwards, right? It's like, what's our goal?
Yep.
It's what makes it so tough is month to month we get swings in revenue. So it's like, I want $100,000 this month, and 100,000 next month, whatever. And you get to, if you do 100,000 every month, it's $1.2 million. Well, that sounds great,
right? But it's never that even.
But it's never 100, right? You're going to have, 250 this month. You're going to have 50 another, things like that are going to make it go all over the board. And so it does become an average. And then there's seasonality to the leads, as you know very well. And some months are better than other months. Different things go on. Like last year was election year, and October, November kind of slowed down, and the ad cost goes up because they're advertising. But ideally, ultimately it's, hey, what do I want my revenue to be? And then what was my average job size last year?
Average
so
ticket
I know
price.
How many jobs I need, and then we can take our closing rate and we can, factor in the closing rate. So if we're selling 1 out of 3 jobs, then
33% closing rate.
I need 100 jobs, then I need 300 leads.
333 leads.
Right.
Or 333 appointments.
Yeah. So
you got to have more leads to get those appointments.
Well, that's true too. Yeah. What's the lead slippage rate and things like that. So yeah, you're 100% right. It's, however many jobs, how many appointments, what's your lead slippage, and how many leads will you need for that. So it's definitely, it sounds good on paper when you say like this is the formula, but like does it actually work that way? Like, no, it's gonna average over the year. It's just like some jobs we make more money on than other jobs, but we're looking for an average, gross profit or net profit.
Do you plan your marketing budget based off? How do you plan your marketing budget? Let's just go with that.
Oh, depends on the year. I mean, I try. I don't know that I'm perfect. I try to base it off of the revenue I want to create.
That's exactly.
So if I,
as a percent of gross.
Yeah, because it's tough because you want to say, well, I want my, a lot of guys are 5 to 10%, depending on who they are, what they're doing. But 5% is pretty decent ad spend if you're doing, $2-3 million a year. That's a fair amount of money to put into it. But if you put 5% of last year's revenue in, then you can't expect to grow, in my opinion. I think that you gotta put 5% of what you want to do.
Sing it, brother Cory.
So it's tough because it's the old adage, you gotta spend money to make money. And when it comes to running ads and generating leads, you've got to invest and it's not like a slot machine where it's like, okay, I'm gonna put $100 in this machine. Okay. Oh, it didn't pay out. I'm going to the next machine. And it's like, it doesn't really work that way. There's so many factors in marketing. And so you gotta learn it.
You do use like a percent of your goal revenue.
That's generally what I shoot for. I shoot for, I won't say it's like perfect because I always overspend. Like we've sponsored some golf courses that we do a lot of work around. I just spent some money doing that. The schools, it's like, yes, there's generally a budget, but I think sometimes there's like, hey, here's this opportunity.
Right. You don't want to let it pass you by.
Yeah. What do I think I can get back on this? And so it's not a perfect percentage. I should probably be a little more on it, but like I said, I think you got to spend money to make money.
So within that percentage, let's just throw some numbers out there. Let's say your target is 8% of your target revenue. Well, then that gives you a number, whatever that number is.
Right.
How do you divide that up between your sponsorships of teams? Do you have like a 50-50? Do you have an 80-20? Or are you just kind of feeling it as you go? Like what happens?
I mean, a lot of our
plans to do TV, radio, digital, sponsorships, field marketing, shows.
And I don't really get, I don't know that we're big enough for the TV radio side of it, but like, I probably should. I've heard some good things on returns from radio in recent past, but yeah, I mean, there's definitely a split. I mean, a lot of ours is focused towards online marketing. Like I would say probably like 70% would be I'd have to look at the numbers, but I say 70%. A majority of it is going to like online spending because that's where the leads come from, whether it's like our website, our SEO, pay-per-click, Facebook ads. There's just a lot of online research going on to where people find the contractor, and just kind of more of the age that we're in from my viewpoint. So I try to put a majority of my money there.
I just like to share those sort of like big picture rule of thumb, because I get asked these questions. How do you set a budget? And if you start with, all right, your revenue goal is $10 million. 8% of that is $800,000. If you go 50-50, digital, non-digital, now you got $400,000 to spend on digital and $400,000 to spend on something offline. And then you've got these buckets. And then within the buckets, now you've got a digital budget, and then you can start to slice and dice that between Google paid, YouTube,
an agency,
SEO, an agency, remarketing. Yeah. I mean, we love these conversations, but I just wanted to like hit on that for the listeners who are trying to figure out what should I spend? And I think it depends on, well, what do you want to make?
Yeah. And I think it depends on the size of your company too. And what how many buckets you should have. I think sometimes it's easy to spread out and have too many buckets. I've done that in years past where I feel like I'm doing too many things. And I think all of it comes down to is the other big thing it comes to is like what actually returned our money in years past. And that's probably like the biggest factor in the like, okay, what leads are selling? And by having a CRM system and looking in that system and saying, what was the lead source of, or how much revenue did each lead source bring in is a good way to say, how big should that bucket be that you're using?
Do you also set goals by your service line or is it all kind of like, would you rather have a roofing lead? Would you rather have a reside? Would you rather have, I know what the answer is, but
yeah, and I'm a big Hardie guy, so we always have this in the marketing meetings, like advertise for Hardie. I want more Hardie.
Always.
So, but yeah, I mean, there's definitely different goals in those where it's like where do you want to put your effort, right? Because it's like if I want to grow my Hardie, well then more of my advertising budget has to go to Hardie.
Absolutely.
Than spreading it evenly, where somebody else may be different. They want to grow their roofing side of the business, so they're gonna put more money in the roofing. And so yeah, I'm just very heavily Hardie, and I see it as a good part of my business.
Yep.
Are you having these conversations about like budgeting and setting KPIs with your clients that you're working on the consulting side? We'll talk to them a little bit about, like where should it all go? I think that's like the number one thing guys want to know is like, well, how do I get more leads? Right. And so it's like, you gotta make those decisions of like, well, what's gone well for you so far? I think that's always the first question. If you want more leads is, if what's going well, how can you increase that? Right.
And then like I said, it really depends on like how big is your company and like what are you already doing, plays a big role into it.
And you've always, even as a partner, been really receptive to our recommendations and strategies. We may come back to you. We always know we want Hardie. We do know that. But if we see windows peaking, if we do see roofing peaking, like in terms of search volume, you are, you're an ideal client.
Your game.
Your game, and we know the end game is, Hardie for that instance, but you're willing and able to shift budgets around if we need to get leads because we see Google is, optimizing at that moment for that service. So I think that's something like in terms of a good partner, you are receptive to, other options.
Yeah.
So, I think, we've been talking for a little while. I really wanted to like make sure we got to plug, your services and what you do. We have contractors listening to us for marketing advice. We wanted to offer, what you do to them
Connect
too.
with Cory. He's going to help you. Tune up all the other parts of your business.
It comes down to, right, like, every contractor is like, I want more leads. And a lot of times leads are directly related to your production. A lot of contractors have a hard time seeing that. And so it's like, you got a lead come in, you need to be able to price that lead. You need to be able to deliver something that the margin on. So, your margin's going into it.
Right.
And then you need to be able to have a good sales process, and you need a production process to make that person happy. And if you do all those things, you get a 5-star review, they'll refer you. They'll leave you reviews that can generate more leads for your company. There's a lot of things that can happen by doing a good job.
Repeat
So
business.
it all starts with leads. One of the things we do there is just help make sure the messaging they understand. I work with the narrative marketing side of it and just like hear what's the messaging, right? Because I think that's
another contractor.
Yeah, I think most marketing companies, it's like, hey, we can help you here, but sometimes it's like, well, what do you want it to be, right? And I think that's important for a contractor to take into consideration. What do you want it to be? What image do you want to be? Do you want to be a cost competitive contractor? Do you want to lead on quality? And depending on what that is, what's your message to that customer? And it should actually kind of follow your whole system, right? The messaging and the marketing should match up with the way you deliver your estimates and your sales process and how you back all of that up in your production team. So I just help them see the processes and give them the opportunity to be able to, with Hardie Board is, hey, here's how you price it. Here's how you can sell it. Here's how you can produce it in a way that I've done it. And I've built a multi 7-figure business doing that. And so
yes, you have.
Here to help them if I can, and give advice where I can. And, I think that we just need more of that in the construction industry. There's a lot of tough guy, I know best, but I'm not going to tell you anything.
Right.
And we just need more collaboration.
Sharing is caring.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
Just to wrap things up, I'd be interested to hear what you think the next few years holds for the home improvement industry. Like, what are some big changes that you see coming, and where are they coming from?
Yeah, I think there's, change is a constant. As technology advances, we're going to continue to see more change. I don't think it's going to slow down in any way. We're going to see lots of technological changes in regards to measurements, in regards to CRM systems, designs, things like that. I think technology is going to continue to, it already has been just reshaping what we do and how we do it. A lot of changes coming out of the insurance companies, which affect
what way?
How they're covering homeowners. So the amount of coverage that homeowners have, the areas that they're covering, deductibles, approval rates, denial rates, things of that nature. So that's constantly changing among contractors. And, I think that we're seeing, more contractors having issues in the industry, creating more need for regulation. I live in a state where there's not a lot of regulation when it comes to contractors' licenses. And I think that we continue to see more issues with contractors. We'll see increased level of regulation to make sure, you go to more, bigger areas, you go over to Illinois, somewhere like that, they have pretty strict regulations over there, and Michigan's the same way. And
like some consumer protection kind of regulations.
Absolutely. Yeah. So venture capital, they're coming in. I've been approached, considered selling my company at one point. I won't do that anymore, but they're here. Some of them have been successful. Some of them are having challenges. So
what are the challenges that you're seeing? I'm assuming you're talking about companies that have been bought by private equity. Are you seeing them struggle?
Yeah, I think their biggest challenges is retaining the employees that are there when they get there. When they lose that staff, the challenges, they want to make more money. Venture capital is about money, and they're not, charities usually.
Nope,
and
never.
So they want to make more money. They got to figure out either how to cut cost or increase margins to do that, increase revenue. So that's their biggest challenge, is retaining the employees that are already there.
Staff that made the company what it was.
Absolutely. We've seen a couple of big companies in town. One of them just, I think, one got bought up and went out. Another one, they got bought up and they've lost the majority of their team. And so it's a tough enough business as it is. And when you lose people that you've built for years, it makes it hard to keep going at the same rate.
Well, did you have any other questions?
No, Cory, that was great. You actually answered multiple questions while you were answering. So you knocked it out of the park. Thank you so much for your time. I know.
Yeah, this was fantastic. We will get it edited, get it published. And I hope that we can send some customers your way for JHC in a box.
Yeah, same here. I think we just got the editing back for the podcast we did, and I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but I'm looking forward to getting that up and going too. I think we talked about so much good stuff in there too. So I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you want to, I've definitely been thinking about the ongoing topics. I think I'm very interested in doing something like that.
Let's make it a series.
Forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you said.
Kathy's here.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, it's just like, just going more into depth of like all of there's just so many pieces to it, right? And I felt like when we did ours, we covered so many. I mean, it's such a long podcast. Thanks for bearing with me. But it's like, how do we cut those down and maybe go a little bit deeper to help out? So,
I mean, the nerd in me would want to do a whole series on spreadsheets and setting KPIs.
That's probably a good one. Yeah, that's a really good one, actually.
All right.
I'm going to get Janet to do the outro. So,
okay,
we can
Cory,
wrap this up. Cory, thank you.
She's
so
giving me the stink eye so we can get out of here.
About the snow.
Yeah, we got snow here and we got to drive home.
And safe travels to Phoenix.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. Everybody, thanks again for joining us for another episode of Digital Marketing for Contractors. As always, we hope you got value from it. And if you give us a half an hour, we'll give you some actionable tips, tricks, and insights to help you grow your business. You can find out more about FatCat Strategies at fatcatstrategies.com. Thanks.
Bye,
Cory. Talk to you soon.
Digital Marketing for Contractors is created by FatCat Strategies. For more information, visit fatcatstrategies.com.